Crocodiles are literally living fossils, remaining relatively unchanged physiologically since the time of the dinosaurs. These amazing and ancient beasts are apex predators in whatever environment they find themselves in, growing to insane lengths during their lifetime. The following specimens are seen by many as the 5 biggest crocodiles in the world and will absolutely amaze you. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Brutus. If you've ever wondered what kind of creature would take on a bull shark, look no further than Brutus, a 5.5 meter long crocodile who did just that. The event was captured on camera by a passing tourist and quickly went viral, making Brutus an overnight sensation. The fight was pretty spectacular, with the croc having the upper hand. Brutus was almost 80 years old at that point, proving once and for all that crocodiles don't get senile with old age, but only grow more massive and powerful. Furthermore, Brutus is one hell of a specimen, weighing at least 2 tons and having no worries at all. He's proven himself able to take on any attacker, meaning he really doesn't have to do much other than sun himself and find whatever animal happens to be around him whenever he gets hungry. He lives along Australia's Adelaide River, which is a tourist hotspot, with Brutus being the main event hands down. Tour guides have known about him for quite some time now, and vacationers have flown in from all over the world just to catch a glimpse of the absolute beast of a croc in action. Back in 2011, he similarly made headlines by leaping clear out of the water to snatch up a kangaroo while onlookers were absolutely stunned. Just imagine watching 2 tons of ferocious croc leap out of the water in one clean motion. That would be enough to surprise just about anyone, and we're sure that Roo had no clue what was going down, even as Brutus landed the killing blow. It's also worth noting that Brutus has been pulling off these miraculous feats while missing his right forearm. Nobody knows how he lost it, but guides claim that it was probably taken during a previous fight with a shark. This leads us to assume that he must wrangle with sharks on a more regular basis than we would have ever thought possible, blowing our expectations of what crocs are capable of out of the water. We all knew that they were vicious enough when they wanted to be, but Brutus seems to be on an entirely new level. Adelaide River cruises tours go right through his territory, with countless locals and tourists catching sight of this beast. He's quite used to people and has never attacked the boats, with guides using fresh meat to get him to jump out of the water much like we'd expect from a seal or dolphin trainer. The man who took the awe-inspiring shot was one Andrew Pace of Sydney, who was vacationing with his family at the time, snapping the picture at the end of the cruise after he noticed the shark in Brutus's jaws. Number 4. Bujang Senang. This was the name given to a terrifying killer crocodile who was known to attack people, with at least a few confirmed kills under its belt. It lived in Borneo, and many locals believe that it had hunted people for over 30 years with impunity before it was finally hunted down and killed. Legends say that the crocodile was actually a man who was cursed to spend his life as a crocodile, growing hateful and full of resentment of other humans. Bujang Senang had a very distinctive white marking on its back, resembling a solid stripe that extended from just behind its front legs to halfway down its tail. This marking alone was enough to convince locals of the croc's legendary power, with everyone fearing it equally. The stories also say that his descendants will carry on the legend and seek justice for the killing, which we have to hope is merely superstition. It would definitely be worrying to assume that Malaysia is now littered with killer crocs intent on taking people out as retribution. Locals decided to kill the deadly crocodile when it attacked and killed a local girl, one Dayang Bayang. This prompted a massive search, with teams eventually finding the beast and identifying it by its enormous size and distinctive white stripe. While estimates had put Bujang Senang's length at over 30 feet, it was later found to be only a little over 19 feet long, which is still pretty damn impressive. We wouldn't be surprised to learn that such a massive beast had indeed been hunting people for 30 years, as it must have been alive for some time to grow to such incredible lengths. We wouldn't, however, be caught dead wandering through the jungle in search of such a legendary animal, especially if the stories were true and it had developed a taste for human blood. 30 years of hunting obviously wasn't enough to prepare it for the search team that eventually did it in, with locals gathering from all over to take a picture with the croc's body. Its skull is now on display in a museum and gives us a glimpse into the last moments of his victims, which would have been painful and terrifying. We're glad that the team was able to tackle this beast and bring an end to its 30-plus year reign of terror, and we're sure that the locals are even more thankful than we are, considering the fact that they had to live in such close proximity to one of the modern world's most prolific hunters. Number 3. Gustav. If you thought Bujang Senang was worthy of your fear, prepare to meet Gustav, a 6-meter-long terror who lived in Burundi and is probably still alive somewhere, wreaking havoc on whatever settlements he comes across. The fact that we don't actually know what happened to Gustav is quite worrying, considering he's known for killing an estimated 300 people. While this is probably an over-exaggeration, we certainly wouldn't be willing to put his prowess to the test and are happy to consider him a very dangerous beast, regardless of his actual kill count. The Nile crocodile stalked the banks of the Ruzizi River and those along Lake Tanganyika since at least the mid-1990s. Many attempts have been made to capture Gustav, all of them resulting in failure, leading researchers to believe that he's actually quite intelligent, which isn't a trait you'd want attributed to a croc that's been known to attack people with indiscriminate viciousness. His size is estimated to be around 6 meters, but this all comes down to mere speculation, as nobody's captured him or even gotten close enough to measure him properly without becoming lunch. Many researchers think that his massive size was what eventually led him to hunt people, with his usual prey being too quick for him to catch up with. He's been shot multiple times, barely registering the 3 bullet wounds visible on his body, with many more scars visible but unaccounted for. He's definitely a serious scrapper, and we bet he can hold his own against any other apex predator, regardless of habitat. Locals also noticed in the 90s and early 2000s that he had a habit of killing his prey and then leaving it uneaten, suggesting he even hunts for fun instead of for food, which is another worrying trait. Last seen in 2008, nobody knows what's happened to Gustav in recent years, although the fact that he's an estimated 70 years old means he's probably still got a ton of fight left in him, assuming he's still alive. He gained notoriety in 2004 when a PBS movie named Capturing the Killer Croc aired and featured a team that was trying to capture him alive. It goes without saying that they weren't successful, with Gustav disappearing entirely only 4 years later. Some recent accounts state that locals have seen him wandering around Burundi, even tangling with fully grown buffalo and dragging them back into the water. These reports, however, have yet to be confirmed. Number 2. Dominator. Another croc whose size is only an estimate, but is very much an enormous specimen regardless, is the aptly named Dominator, who's expected to measure over 6 meters from tip to tail. He lives along the Adelaide River, the same habitat as Brutus, who started today's countdown. This marks the Adelaide River as a hotspot for giant crocodiles. Dominator's still very much alive and is a regular sight for tour boats who make daily runs along the river. Many experts say that a showdown between the two will eventually become inevitable as the two compete for resources, although we like to think that they can learn to live with one another. That fight hasn't happened yet, but we do think the footage would be spectacular. That being said, Brutus did suffer a massive wound during a recent off-season, and many think the only creature capable of causing such wounds would be Dominator, meaning he might already be testing his older rival in anticipation of that final showdown. Others say that it probably wasn't Dominator, as the two crocs have learned to give each other their space for the sake of keeping the peace. Brutus is older and more experienced than Dominator, but his missing limb would definitely give Dominator a bit of an edge physically. There's also the fact that Dominator is slightly larger, measuring an estimated 6.1 meters. He's even recently taken Brutus's signature move, being photographed leaping out of the water so high that his nose reached above the tour boat's canopy, which is pretty spectacular and, we have to admit, outshines Brutus in that regard. Still, it's probably easier to build up that momentum with all of his limbs intact, so Brutus should receive a slight handicap to keep things fair. If you're interested in seeing two of the world's largest crocodiles up close, it goes without saying that Adelaide's your spot to be, and you should probably hurry up, just in case they end up realizing that their little river isn't big enough for the both of them. Number 1. Lolong. This croc is a little different than the rest in our countdown, other than the fact that he's hands down the largest ever recorded. What sets him apart is that he was captured in the wild and kept in captivity, while all the others were simply wild crocs. It's much harder to measure a wild croc, which makes Lolong's length more definite than most of the others, or at least those who are still alive. Lolong is also, very unfortunately, no longer with us, after dying in 2013 from pneumonia and a heart attack. When all's said and done, this is a pretty peaceful way for a croc to go, and we're sure that Lolong's final days were relatively painless, despite him being deathly ill. These complications arose from his poor living conditions, causing unnecessary strain on his body and mental well-being, which is saddening to say the least. He was an Indo-Pacific saltwater croc and measured a whopping 6.17 meters, blowing the competition out of the water. He also weighed 1,075 kilograms, making him one of the largest crocs ever measured. He was originally captured in the Philippines in 2011, and it took 3 weeks to finally capture him, with 100 people needing to drag him back to land. He was captured after it was thought that he had developed a taste for human flesh, supposedly killing some local fishermen and a 12-year-old girl. On a lighter note, it seems he also enjoyed snacking down on seahorses, with many blaming him for their disappearance in the area. PETA petitioned that he be released back to his natural habitat after it was determined that he hadn't eaten the poor girl, but it was eventually decided that he should remain in captivity to protect locals living in the area, which we think was a pretty safe bet. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.